Thank you very much for joining us today. Um, we are live both on Facebook and YouTube, and we have three wonderful speakers today. We have Crary Myers, we have Ainsa Hepburn, and we have Graham. And Graham, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Oh,
um, but these three NCA alumni, I would say, because they're now completed their exams. So the three of you all wrote your exams in the August 2020 sessions, which was arguably one of the most difficult periods, I think, to write your exams, because it was the first time that the NCA exams were held online, and there were, how do you say this? There were some technical difficulties, right? Um, but generally, the exams were over a 1 week period. At least that was what it was scheduled for. And the three of you decided to do all 5 of your exams in that 1 week, and you walked out of there unscathed, meaning all three of you were successful, and you are now over. The NCA process is over for you, and you're now onto the licensing process, which is wonderful. So welcome. Thank you very much for agreeing to be here. I know there's going to be a lot of people asking questions, and I'm sure there's a lot of great advice that you have to offer those people. So if you can, if you're online and you're watching and you have questions for our audience, just post your questions in the comments section, whether you're on YouTube, you can post it in the comment section. If you're on Facebook, there's also the comment section as well. So please do post your questions for these speakers, because we're only going to have them once, and they're very valuable resources. Good to hear from varying opinions from different people that have done their exams all at once. So maybe I'll kick it off while we're waiting for people to ask questions. But I just want to start with why. Why did you decide to write all 5 exams at once? That's a lot of pressure. What convinced you? Ainsa, do you want to start?
So I decided it because I didn't want to prolong the process. So I moved here. I only knew surface what NCAs were about. And I was really, really scared that I would have to do, I think the max you can do is about 9. So even going through the application process, I was trying to plot out like how long it would take for me to get my license here. So when I got my assessment, it only said 5. I thought about it. I literally did bar school last year, and bar school was the same thing. It was exams back to back to back. So I did bar school last year, and since it was only 5, like if it was 7, I would have spread it out a bit more. But since it was only 5, I said, why not? And it's I looked at the schedule the years ahead, and it wasn't like 2 a day or 3 in 1 day or like different times in a day. It was literally 1 per day. So I just thought about how like it may have been stressful, but I just wanted to get it over with, to be perfectly honest. I didn't want to prolong this any longer than I had to. COVID had other plans.
Right.
So that's the real reason. I just wanted to get them over with. And I told myself, like, if I fail one, I always have another chance to do it again. So that was my strategy, just to get it done.
And where did you do bar school?
Oh, in the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas.
Yes.
Okay. Was it you that just voted out the Queen? Was it? All right, touchy subject. We're not going to talk politics. Crary, what were your thoughts going into this? Why did you?
Pretty similar, actually. I just wanted to get everything over and done with. But also for me, I'm a little bit older. School was a long time ago, and I was so I wanted to get sort of into test mode and stay there, as opposed to try and prolong that over a long time. I can kind of get in the habit of reading cases and going over notes and that sort of thing. And it's easier for me to do that over a short, intense period than it would be to try and spread that out over months and stay in academic mode, as it were.
Right. I think there are many people writing these exams that haven't been in school for a little while. Did you did you have to train beforehand? Did you have to do some light jogs first, or what did you do to get ready and to get back into it?
Honestly, when I sat down and started reading cases, it was a little bit like that first week of law school, and I was like, what am I reading? How do I interpret this? But as I stuck with it, it came back pretty quickly. I didn't do any particular training, although it did definitely take me a little while to sort of ramp up to actual study mode. I had to get back into that legal academic brain sort of part.
Right. Okay. And Graham, what about you? What the heck were you thinking? Attempting all 5 at once?
I agree with prolonging. I didn't want to prolong it anymore. I graduated in the UK here in December 2019. I didn't receive my assessment till end of March. So my goal really was to split it up in May and August. But unfortunately, the May did get canceled. And I was fortunate to have time to be able to study for 5. So I felt like having from end of March to August gave me enough time to be prepared for 5 exams in a row. And like I said, I didn't want to prolong it anymore. And I was just out of school, so I felt like I'm still kind of in the study mode. So let's just get it done with.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was shaking my head in agreement. Sorry.
Yeah. Very good. So we don't have any questions yet, and if you do have questions, you should post them, okay? Because we can't answer the questions after the fact. But which exams did you find most difficult? I know the answer might be different for each of you, but Crary, maybe if you want to start.
It was definitely admin for me, which was not what I expected. And that was just basically due to the nature of the question, which was a very long fact pattern and a very sort of nebulous question, which was just sort of identify all the issues.
Right.
And for me, that's a tough kind of question I can spin off in a lot of different ways. I like the problem questions and sort of the shorter ones because they're sort of self-constraining, if you will. Mm-hmm. So the admin one was honestly, that's the only one that stood out. The rest of them were all pretty equal for me, but admin was definitely the sort of the difficulty side.
Okay. You mentioned something about reading and how it was difficult because it was a long question. What does that look like in the online format? So there's some people that are
the actual process of just getting through and reading the questions kind of difficult because you're scrolling. I don't know, different screens might do it differently, but it was a lot of me having to scroll back and forth, look up and down. I had to double check my facts. Did it say X? Did it say Y? And it was because it was such a long fact pattern and such a long answer necessarily. It was much more. I had to go back and forth a lot more than in any of the other exams. With a short fact pattern, I can generally read it once, type out the answer, and move on. This was a whole lot more. And also me, just with my old brain, I found that I missed a lot of facts I got wrong. And I'd go back and go, oh, it didn't say that. It actually said the opposite. So It was a challenge, both sort of the academic, but also just sort of straight up physically.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, I've never written the online version of the exam, but I understand that you have your screen is kind of split in a way where the top part of your screen is where your question will be, and then in the bottom half is where you're typing. So you're really dealing with, half of a screen. So if you have a long question, you just have to keep scrolling to get through the entire fact pattern. And that's what makes it difficult when you've got a long fact pattern, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Graham? What did you find? Which subject was the most difficult for you?
It's surprisingly, I have to agree with Crary, the admin law. I did find foundations a bit tricky as well. It was very broad. You could not predict the questions. In admin and foundations, I felt like it was more like right there, like what you knew right then and there, like applying yourself right then and there, whereas it was more on the syllabus anyways. But the admin, again, the scrolling up and down, looking at the fact pattern, it took a lot of time. and it was a bit exhausting. I say the foundations one was a bit exhausting too. That was when I had the most technical issues, and I was quite furious before starting that exam. I was very upset getting delayed a couple hours and not being able to talk to anybody or tell anybody my problems, and nobody's going to reply to me because everybody's going through the same thing. So it did get me quite upset and furious before the 4 hours. So I was pretty mentally drained during that exam, to be honest, the foundations. And then after that, when the technical issues happened later in the week, I actually kind of calmed down a little bit. I was just like, let me get these exams done with. Even though I know these technical issues are going to happen now, it's just like I'm comfortable with them, and now I know what's going to happen. But
Well, it paid off.
It paid off, yeah.
Good, you're done. Ainsa, how about you? I think you have different vision here, or different.
So I think that so I have two. My hardest exam I say is foundations. And like Graham, I had technical difficulties with that one, but I guess I was one of the lucky few because that day was the only day that I had technical issues and delays. Like that was the only day. I logged on. They didn't give us instructions that you have to prompt them so that you're not locked out after 15 minutes. So I think foundations was maybe the third exam. So I wasn't aware that you had to do that. And then another thing is that I kept getting locked out. I think maybe the number of people they had at the time, I kept getting locked out, and I was delayed about 3 hours before I can get in. So I get into the exam and it's all problem questions. I just wanted to cry. So because I looked at it and I thought, this doesn't look like anything in my notes. It was all problem questions, but I used your method. I remember what you said in our tutorial, Liren, just to look at your index and try to think about which topic the question would apply to. And that seemed to work because I passed. But I was literally ready to cry and close my laptop when I saw that exam because I'm already frustrated. I waited 3 hours. I've been getting kicked out all day, and then it's all problem questions, and it doesn't look like anything in my notes. So that one I would say was the hardest one for me. The next one was criminal, to be very honest with you. I know that that's probably not usually the most hardest for a lot of people. But for me, it's because I thought that it should have been more complicated than it was. I guess I overthought it. Like I felt like I wrote the same answer for the entire exam. Like I don't know how you guys felt, but most of my can I say this? Like what it was about? Can I say that? No? Yes?
Not the exam question itself, but maybe you can talk about what you were.
Can I say what I wrote in my answers?
Sure.
Okay, so most of my questions surrounded the topic of vicarious liability. That was, so Crary, you had the same type of question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was so scared because I kept quoting the same section and the same cases for most of my exams. So I thought like, oh my gosh, I failed this because there's no way they're going to ask me the same thing over and over and over again. So that's why I thought that one was also hard as well.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. So different people have different perspectives on what they find hard, and take it with a grain of salt what one person says because it's often subjective as well.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to invite the three of you so we have difference of opinion, a diverse voice of opinions. We've got some questions here that have popped up in the side. I think some of them are very broad questions, so you can take them either way. But the first one from Savannah. Savannah asks, what were your study techniques closer to the exam? I feel so prepared when I'm reviewing my notes, but I don't feel ready when I attempt to pass papers. Is there any advice you can give to this lost soul?
Personally, what I usually do is that I create a timeline, and about a month or so closer to the exam, I did nothing but pass papers. So if you don't feel ready when you attempt to pass papers, my suggestion would be to do more of them. The more you do, the more comfortable you are, and that's going to help with your anxiety when you go into the exam. That's my perspective.
I
Go
can't
ahead.
hear.
Just going to add that there's, the UBC Peter Allard School of Law has a database and bank of questions for exams spanning back as far as 7 years or so. You can find multiple exams for each year. So it's a great resource. If you just Google the Peter Allard School of Law past exams, you'll find a whole bunch of practice exams. Yeah, Crary, go ahead.
For me, studying with another person close to the exams was very valuable. I don't know if anybody else sort of learns the same way, but being able to bounce ideas off someone, have them explain ideas to me, but even more valuably, I think explain ideas back to them, right? Because writing exams is basically you're explaining the law to someone. And if you can practice that with another person, that's great. I would also say just in general, I've practiced law for quite a while. I think academically, this is sort of up my alley. And every exam I looked at, I would read the question and think, oh my God, I have no idea how to answer this. My first reaction, no matter what the question is. So just don't panic, take your time, find little hooks into the question, figure out what they're asking you, what you know about it. And before long, I think most people find, oh yeah, I understand now, I get what they're asking. Just don't panic with your initial impression.
That's great advice, and that happens. I remember, although my exams were very long ago, but I do remember a similar experience, at least in foundations, where I'm just like, oh my goodness, what is this exam? Honestly, I was worried that I walked into the wrong exam. I just didn't recognize the type of question, similar to your experience, Ainsa. So totally normal. Just perhaps get over it, and then once you've calmed down, once your nerves have calmed down, you'll be able to pick it up. Graham, you have anything to add to that?
Pretty similar. Honestly, Larry, your exam prep was huge, especially for PR, constitutional, admin, and criminal. Like the way you structure your answers was similar to what I did, and I felt very comfortable. So doing exactly what Ainsa said as month before, just do as many practice problems as you possibly can, and just keep practicing and kind of follow your structure, Liren, and I think you should be fine.
Very good. I'm sure it was all you. Okay. So we have some other questions here. Okay, same general question. A lot of differing opinions on what is suggested for studying for these exams, notes, books, combination. What material did you guys use? And congratulations.
Thank you.
Anyone want to touch on that first? What materials did you get? The books? Did you read the cases? Crary, go ahead.
Yeah, my general thought is the Liren's classes are great. I bought the notes. I think they're very worthwhile for organization, but there really is no substitute for actually reading the cases. So, I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to read every case, but you can separate out pretty quickly the important cases that you should read. And those are like law exams written by the experts. Law is as much about language as it is anything else. And actually sort of taking in that language is a very important thing. So I actually didn't use the textbooks all that much other than to read cases. I used Liren's notes, the cases, and that was basically what worked for me.
Anyone have a different experience?
I used Liren.
I used your notes, the tutorial. I think the exam prep that's something everyone should do because like you actually go through the questions. I think it would depend on the type of person you are. If you're more of a practical type of person, and because I take more in by doing practice questions, if you can just read notes and you're fine, congratulations to you. But I'm more of I learn by doing. So your exam prep was really, really good. Your notes and just like Crary said, like if I felt like a case was very important, like there's certain cases I read, like the new cases for admin, I read those. Baker, I read that too because that crossed over a few exams. So yeah, so like there's certain cases that you should read, but the notes are enough, I feel.
Yeah, and personally, what I did 2 months before is I looked at the syllabus and compared Liren's notes, and I tabbed each point of the syllabus, each case. So like I felt like organization was huge for the exam, like looking at the tabs and like you said there, and looking at the syllabus and then going to the topic. And then if you have it tabbed right there instead of flipping through wondering where it is, like it just saves you so much time and so much valuable time, especially on long exams. So I think organization is key too. And that's probably kind of the first step where you should kind of start, is going through the syllabus, making sure you have the right material, make sure you have everything in the syllabus, because there's cases that can catch you off guard that do show up in the exams. I found one in criminal that I was like, whoa, I didn't expect that. And I had to flip through a lot. So I had a tab, so I was able to look at it and was able to get the answer that I thought was right. So.
Right. So knowing how to navigate your materials, knowing where to find things, is particularly important. And actually, since you guys wrote your exams, I did a major overhaul of our constitutional law notes, complete overhaul in style and structure. And the table of contents, I mean, you may find it's overkill, but it's about 30 pages just because I've got all of the cases actually in the table of contents under the relevant sections so that you can find them and know which sections they belong under. I wanted to ask you, perhaps you have different experiences, but a common question people ask is, how much time should you allocate to studying for these exams? And perhaps you can preface that with telling people whether you're studying full-time or not, or whether you have other obligations. And so how much time did you allocate for preparing?
I started probably back in April, May when I first took your classes, but I'd say that was only about 4 hours a day. I was fortunate enough that I didn't have another job, so all my time could have been to studying, but I kind of went a little bit slower at the start, and then once June, I started to ramp up to probably about 6 hours a day. Organizing mostly in June, and then probably July, probably even to 6 to 8 hours a day if I wanted to. Reviewing, and some days I'd take off if I had some other obligations to do. Not every day, like I'd take weekends off. And then probably August, 2 weeks before, I did probably about 8 to 10 hours, 2 weeks before the exam, just doing practice problems over and over and over again, reviewing the notes. So I guess everybody's different, but I felt like I probably did overkill, but I just wanted to make sure I was 100%.
Weren't you at the cottage for one of the classes?
I was, yeah, in July. I was
at the internet with the cottage going out.
Yeah, that dedication.
So I worked full time. The only time I took off was the week for the exams. So I pretty much studied every evening. So I think as soon as I got home, I would study until. So I started studying in March. So I started pretty early. And then when I heard it was delayed, I took weekends off. But then when I found out the dates, I started doing that again. So I think I would put in like from 6 to about 9 the first like month or so. And then closer to, so June and July. No, July would go from 6 to like 12. And then I would study all weekend. So that's how I studied. So all day on the weekends and then about 6 hours per day. A month.
Wow. A lot of work to be working full time and all 5 of your exams. I mean,
I couldn't take the time off, so I had to do it.
Yeah,
probably.
It gives some of you perspective out there because I know, people are asking, I have to work full time, or maybe some of you have small children.
That makes it harder.
It definitely makes it harder, but you can be working full time and you can still find a way to do it, and that's great. It's wonderful. Crary, do you have a similar or different
I'm a very structured studier. So from about May, I think I began, and it was at that point it was just kind of reading the cases, reading the books, going through, not particularly doing anything. It was sort of end of July, August when I really sort of knuckled down I was working part-time during this, so fortunately I had some other obligations, but nothing too taxing. And yeah, for the last sort of 3 weeks, I'd say I studied. I would do. I wish I could do like Ainsa did. I wish I could just sort of write practice exams all day, but my brain just won't allow me to do that. I want to write like a practice exam a day, go back to my normal studying, and then sort of try and do it that way to break it up a little bit. It's the message I like to get across is just that it is very doable. You know, it's something you can get through. I was definitely daunted when it began, thinking, how am I going to do this? I got to squeeze like essentially a year of law school into these 3 months. Fortunately, it's not quite that intense. It's not something you can take lightly, but it's eminently doable.
Right. Well, I mean, for the people watching, if you're still writing your NCA exams, obviously this year the NCA has completely revamped their schedule, and so you will not have such a difficult, condensed schedule as these three because they wrote all their exams, all 5 of their exams in 1 week, and now that 1 week period has effectively been stretched out over a 3-month period, right? So there's still 4 exam cycles a year in the NCA process, but they've taken each exam cycle and stretched it over a 3-month period. So if you want to write 5 exams, it's over 3 months, which is significantly lighter than or arguably lighter than what you guys have done. So it's certainly possible, especially with the new schedule. But I don't want our viewers thinking that, I don't want you to feel pressure now that you have to write all 5 exams at once. I just wanted to, show you that it was possible and to speak to people that actually have attempted it and have been successful in attempting it. But you should take it at your own pace. And so if your own pace is writing 1 exam for exam sitting, that's absolutely fine. No one's here to judge you for that. That's the pace that it should be. And if you just want to test out the waters and do 1 exam at once, that's completely fine as well. There shouldn't be any pressure. But I hope that this group here motivates you and shows you that it is possible, especially working full time. That's incredible. That's a testament to your own abilities here to do that. So that's quite impressive. Do we have any other questions here? From Akshay, I don't know if you have specific questions, but the question is about, I'm taking my constitutional law exam on the 12th. Any quick tips? It's my first ever NCA exam. I'm just using Loren's notes. Anyone do you remember constitutional law? Sometimes when you write these exams, you forget everything the day after.
I can tell you the best tip from me is don't assume you know anything on the Constitution. Always refer back to the text, because I can very easily get myself in trouble and, oh yeah, I know what that says. But always read it, even if you know the text stone cold. Go back and just make sure.
For me, what helped with constitutional foundation and admin, I had all 3 exam materials with me for each exam. I think constitution was my second one, and I think I had a question that my notes in, I believe, admin or foundations went into more depth of it than the constitutional notes. So that would be I think that would the most helpful is just to have all of your notes, but I think Liren's notes are very comprehensive, so I think they're enough. If you still feel uncomfortable, I would say read the cases if you have time. But yeah.
I'd have to agree with that. And make sure, if you're confused by the question in constitutional, make sure you read it over and over again until you understand what they're asking. Because there's a couple times I had to read the question, like exactly what they're asking, about 3 or 4 times, because I felt like they're asking me the same question. It's like, and then I get like applicable, operable, valid was one of the questions, and I like almost missed it. I almost missed the applicable because it said the exact same thing above, but this one asked me something different. So I said, just make sure you read over the question as much time and make sure you're clear exactly what they're asking, because a lot of constitutional can overlap and you can get confused.
Great tip, great advice, and I think that's equally useful for the other exams as well. I always say spend the time that you need to read the questions. I think you were saying before we went live something about how much time you spent reading your admin law question.
45 minutes it took me. I was scared. I was like, oh my God, I only have 3 hours and 15 minutes. It took me 45 minutes to read it twice. And I still was still kind of questioning some things, but there was so much in it. And it's yeah.
I think it's important to invest the time in reading the question, because if you miss those issues, if you misread the question, then everything else that follows is unfortunately not going to be right. So it's certainly worth it. And this year, you do have an extra hour. So the NCA has said for 2021, they're going to keep the exams 4 hours long. So you still have the additional hour.
I think that helped a lot.
Oh,
I didn't know if I would have been, I used all of my time. So, and I even wrote them an email, just like you said, I wrote them an email afterwards and said, please keep it at 4 hours. Like, this is necessary, because I really think that extra hour makes a difference.
That's very cool of you, since you passed all your exams. So you're still thinking about the future generations. It's very kind.
No, yeah.
Very good. Do we have any other questions here? What's your strategy for admin law? Let's try and get more specific or detailed questions, because I know these are quite broad and high level, but if you have any strategies for admin, what would they be?
I would just refer to Graham's earlier comment. Read the question carefully. Take the extra time to read the question, because there's, like, I know there were, I think you always stress this in your exam strategy tutorial. I don't know if you want me to say it, or is that okay? Like, to say what you
said? Yeah.
Yeah. So Leron always told us that there isn't like a lot of people do templates, and that's not always helpful, because you may catch an issue that's not there, and that you're gonna waste time, and you may miss an issue that is there, and that works against you. So I would just follow what Graham says, like, take the time, read the question, read it carefully. And if you need to read it over, try to see if you can read it over and go from there.
Because I said, but the comment about the templates is exactly it. I know people go in with these prepared templates of what they should be answering, and then what they end up doing is trying to force that template into their exam question, rather than say, wait a second, hang on a second. I've got a question here, and it's asking me X, Y, and Z, which has nothing to do with my template. Why am I trying to follow this structure that makes no sense for the question that's before me? I need to adapt to the question that's being asked. I need to address the issues that are on the exam and not something else. And so I think that's great advice to give. Thank you.
I go. You can read another. I agree with what you said. I just say you got to know the inside and out of Baker and Vavilov. If it's still on the syllabus, you have to read the case like in full. You have to know every detail of it and how to apply it. Like, those cases, I can't stress enough how important they were on the exam. Like, you have to know how to go through them quickly. Otherwise, you get wrapped up and you type too long, or don't know what you're really doing. So I know that's just kind of a technical. Yeah. Anyways.
That's great. We've got a question about the software here. It says, what happens when there are technical issues? Do you get extra time, or does your time stop? How do you contact NCA or the proctor? Did anyone have technical issues while they were writing?
So my technical issues were, I was fortunate that it only delayed the beginning of the exam. Once my exam started, I had no technical issues, but I was sitting there at my computer waiting for, in one instance, about 3 hours before I actually began to start writing. And once I started writing, everything was sort of okay at that point. I don't know if anybody else had different experiences.
Yeah, same foundations. The second day, I had to wait 2.5 hours. You just got to be patient, I got quite frustrated, quite heated. I was quite upset because I couldn't in the queue. So you start in a queue, and if 15 minutes goes by and you don't press a button in the queue, you get kicked out, and now you're at the bottom of the queue again. So you might be the last person to get back in. And in the queue, when it's so busy with students, nobody's answering you. You can't say, hello, is anybody there? Nobody's answering you. So I just say, just be patient. Somebody will finally get to you. Somebody finally got to me and they apologized. They were very nice. The proctors are very nice. They're quite helpful, I find. They tell you, you can go to the bathroom and come back, and they're easy to communicate with. I didn't have any issues with the proctors. I didn't have any issues during the exam either. Just the start time, one was 2.5 hours. Constitutional was 4 hours. I waited to start the exam in a queue, which was it's draining for sure, but it was what it was. I was just happy to write them at that point.
So I've spoken to a few people who said they had technical difficulties. What they said is that you notify your proctor if you can, because if the system's frozen, if you can't notify your proctor, but like when it finally unfreezes, sometimes they said, like one guy, he told me that his proctor was able to give him more time. So he was able to do, like, he lost 10 minutes because his system froze. So his proctor gave him an extra 10 minutes. So it really depends on the proctor. But I was only unlucky on the foundations day. What I did, I don't know if it will work for everybody, but this is what I did because I was able to start all of my exams on time. And some of my exams I did earlier than the time that I had chosen. What I did is that I signed on about an hour before my exam. So that's the first thing I did. And then there's a comment section on Monitor EDU. So I would go back and forth with my queue and that. So I'd be like, hey, I've been waiting for a very long time. No one's gotten to me. And then they would like put me to the top of the queue. Now, I don't know if it will work for everybody. That's what worked for me. So that's a little trick around it. It worked for me because my only delay was foundations. Every other exam, I either took an hour before I was supposed to take it or at the start time. So that worked.
I wish I would have known.
Well, you know now, Ken. You can always rewrite them if you like. So Savannah asks, how did you manage your notes and all the other materials on the day of the exam? Do you feel overwhelmed with having to go back and forth?
What I did is I split each one up in a small little binder, and I had 2 huge tables beside me, and I had the syllabus and usually the statute in one book, and then I had my notes in another book, and then sometimes I'd have some other classes that may overlap, like admin with consti or consti with admin, vice versa, kind of close to me as well, just in case I had to go look through that. But that's I just had different binders for each of the things. I try to make everything organized, and I feel overwhelmed a little bit. It kind of got a little hectic when I did bring some things out of the binder, but I try to keep everything in the binder so it was organized. Yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, my approach was similar to Graham's. The notes for each subject, I had them bound. So I had those, and then I had a notebook for each subject. So I did my notes and my practice questions per subject in a different notebook. So on the day of the exam, I had a big table. I didn't use a small desk. I had a big table so that if it was admin exams, my admin notebook and my admin Liren's notes were closest to me. And then I had Constitution and Foundations on the table somewhere else so that I can refer to them. So it's organization, I would say. Organization really, really, really helps with anxiety. So that's how I did it.
So for me, I was just showing you one of my binders. I had all my binders available. Liren's notes were invaluable on the day of the exam. They were worth the price just for that, because I found on the exams what I used were Liren's notes, at least a case or 2 I bring out, and a little bit of the book, but I had these thousands of pages printed out that were mostly like a security blanket, right? They're mostly there in case I needed to go to them, but I didn't have to that much. I still check things once in a while, but yeah, it's just, it's a good idea to have all your notes for whatever classes you happen to be taking, have them all available because there's crossover you won't expect. But I didn't find it overwhelming. You know, I found it very, it gave me confidence knowing that the stuff was there, even though I didn't use probably 80% of what I had prepared.
Right, and of course that's going to be the case because you only tested on, you know, it's a portion of what it is you learned, but at the same time, of course, the other things that you learned probably affected, you know, your knowledge of the parts that you were tested on as well. Wonderful. Do we have any more questions coming through? And if not, I'm just curious, what are your next steps now? You're all in different jurisdictions, so what's next for you? What do you have planned? Crary, do you want to start?
Sure. So just reaching out to some of the legal contacts I have here in the Calgary area, trying to figure out some articling opportunities and moving on from there.
Okay, very good. And when do you have plans to start prep? First, you need to find articles. Is that the process in Alberta?
Yeah. So I, like I say, I have some contacts to reach out to and see if they have any suggestions and take it from there.
Graham has some different advice for you. Graham, tell him what to do.
Where you can start prep CPLED without articles.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just contact CPLED. Just give them a quick email, and they're really helpful.
I will do that. Thank you, Graham.
I didn't know that either, but I did a little research and I found that out as well.
Yeah, I believe they've waived the requirement recently, perhaps COVID related. So at least you can get CPLED, you know, registered for CPLED, and who knows, maybe they'll let you finish the whole thing in 1 week as well. Just tell them how you did on the NCAs. Very good.
This experience.
Yeah. How about yourself, Ainsa?
Same. So I'm in Vancouver, so I'm looking for an articling position. Unfortunately, I can't do PLTC without an articling contract. So that's where I am right now.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So I want to thank the three of you again. Thank you so much. This means a lot to those that are, you know, still in the NCA process and they see you at the finish line. And I think it's huge inspiration. The three of you are wonderful. There's a quick question. Somebody's asking if 1 month is enough to prepare for one exam. I have foundations next month, and I think that question is, well, it depends, but I'll let you guys answer Kelly's question. Anyone want to take that on?
I think it depends. If you're only doing foundations, if you're only doing it in a month, I think it is possible. But it really depends on you. You would have to get through. Liren's notes are the best. Trust me, I looked at some other notes. Liren's notes are the best. You'd have to, I would say, be able to read that in its entirety. I would definitely say at the least, take his exam prep course and do past paper questions. So I think you can if it's the only one you're doing, but it really depends.
I can speak to the new syllabus, Kelly. There was a new syllabus released not long ago where they updated. It was 14 articles and a bunch of new cases, and the articles in the 10th topic, which covers administrative law, are incredibly advanced. They're advanced for people that are writing administrative law, let alone for people that are writing foundations of Canadian law. And they really go into, you know, in-depth post-Vavilov cases. And they have some theories now about the new application of reasonableness and talking about it's a more stringent and robust standard, which is what's discussed in Vavilov itself, but they seem to imply that perhaps it's a different type of reasonableness than we've seen before. And you know, I can't stress this enough, but I really think the order of your exams should be constitutional law first. If you didn't register for constitutional law and you register for foundation first, don't have a panic attack. It's still possible to do it. I'm just saying that it would make things easier if you began the process with constitutional law and administrative law, at least before or at the same time you're attempting foundations of Canadian law, because the materials and the articles that are found in the foundations course are dense, they're advanced, and you don't have sufficient knowledge of the administrative law course to understand those articles unless you've taken administrative law. So it is helpful. You can do it without taking administrative law, but it's certainly going to be much more helpful as you take an administrative law first. So for those of you that are still thinking about the order you should write your exams in, that's my personal preference. And I say that even more so with the new foundations syllabus and the new articles that are on it. Yeah. Any other tips? Can foundations be done in a month? I think so. Yeah.
If that's your only one.
Yeah.
Okay. Megan, any hot tips on criminal law? I'll start with a quick tip. Make sure you get familiar with the criminal code before you go to the exam. Don't start figuring things out during the exam. Right? Any of you guys have a quick hot tip for crim?
Yeah, you just make sure you know that criminal code, because I did not expect the crime that came up in my exam, but knowing the criminal code, knowing where it was, and then knowing how to do the AR and MR quite quickly helped me for the rest of the exam, which is like an extension. My question anyways was an extension on the first question. I just kept going. So if you get that first part wrong, which was I think 30 or 40 marks for me, you could be in trouble. So knowing the criminal code and knowing how to do an AR and MR is huge.
Great tip. Wonderful. Anything to add, anyone?
I would just say criminal law for me is the most sort of mechanical of the exams in terms of, like Graham said, figure out your AR, MR, apply the facts, move on to the next one, do the same thing over again. And I think Ainsa mentioned at some point, it feels sometimes like you're answering the same question over and over. Like they've just, maybe they tweak one thing in the fact pattern or give you, the next, a different part of the statute. But I found criminal law to be the easiest for that reason, but it can be deceptive because, like Graham said, if you make a mistake early on, it can lead to a bad result.
Great, awesome tips. Thank you so much. Thank you, of course, Crary, Ainsa, Graham. Thank you so much for joining me today and agreeing to speak to everybody. And thank you to everyone in the audience for watching. This will be on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it again. And you can post questions. I'll be happy to answer those questions as well. So post questions on the video. We'll get back to you and we'll respond for those tips. Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy Sunday to a much better, prosperous New Year. Okay? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.